and any members of the public in the public gallery or viewing the live stream. Welcome to the sitting of the two cabinets of Cambridge City Council and South Cambridgeshire District Council to discuss the Greater Cambridge Local Plan. My name is Councillor Katie Thornborough, leader of Cambridge City Council, and I am chairing the meeting on behalf of Cambridge City Council. To my left is Councillor Bridget Smith, leader of South Cambridgeshire District Council, who will be chairing the meeting on behalf of South Cambridgeshire District Council. We'll be holding separate meetings of our cabinets and therefore have separate votes at the end of this meeting, but there will be a shared discussion of the Greater Cambridge local plans. Those in the chamber are reminded that the meeting is being live streamed. By your presence here in the chamber and via video conference, you are deemed to have consented to being filmed and to the use of images and sound recordings for a webcast and archived recording. The normal procedure at both cabinet meetings is to take votes by affirmation. When we move to a vote on any item, I will ask if members agree with the proposal. Only those members on the cabinet present in the chamber will be able to move and second motions and vote. Members present virtually may speak on the debate. For clarity in the interest of transparency, we will be taking votes on agenda items by authority. I will first ask the Cabinet members of Cambridge City Council to vote on the item. The meeting will then adjourn and South Cambridgeshire District Council Cabinet will then convene under the chair of Councillor Bridget Smith to take the items on the South Cambridgeshire District Council agenda and take the vote when necessary. There will also be points during the meeting where we will be fulfilling our own respective constitutional commitments. I will make this clear throughout the course of the meeting. For both authorities, members of the Cabinet will be entitled to speak before non-Cabinet members. Opportunities will then be provided for the following to speak: Chair of Cambridge City Council's Performance, Asset and Strategy Overview and Scrutiny Committee, Chair of South Cambridgeshire's Scrutiny and Overview Committee, opposition leaders of Green Party and Liberal Democrats from Cambridge City Council, any other member from Cambridge City Council and South Cambridgeshire District Council. May I ask those who are joining us remotely to ensure that their cameras and microphone remain off unless they are addressing the Cabinet. For those of us present in the room, please ensure your microphone is close to you and speak clearly when addressing the room. Councillor Smith, have you anything to add?
Thank you very much indeed. So as South Cambridgeshire District Council leader, I formally open the South Cambridgeshire District Council Cabinet meeting and I welcome you all to South Cambridgeshire Hall this evening.
And thank you for coming to South Cambridgeshire Hall. We had initially thought this was going to be held in the Guildhall, but we're very pleased to be here. Thank you. So item number 1 is apologies for absence. First item on our agenda today is for apologies. Am I aware for any apologies from councillors? I'd like to hand over to Claire Tanniclough or Dan Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. No apologies from Cambridge City Council.
And perhaps PC to announce any apologies for South Cambridgeshire District Council.
Thank you. There are no apologies from South Cambridgeshire District Council.
Thank you very much. I'll now move on to item number 2 of the agenda, declarations of interest. Do any members have interest to declare in relation to any items on the business of this agenda? I look to Cambridge City Council's members first. That's nothing. And South Cambridgeshire District Council members, do you have any interest to declare? No. If any interests subsequently become apparent later in the meeting, please would you raise it at that point. Item 3, announcements. On behalf of Cambridge City Council, I don't have any announcements to make.
I don't have any announcements either. Thank you.
Okay. Item 4, minutes. South Cambridge Cabinet members will be asked to approve the minutes from the June Cabinet meeting. I will adjourn the City Council's Cabinet meeting to enable South Cambridgeshire's District Council Cabinet to convene under the chair of Councillor Bridget Smith.
Thank you. It's a very well choreographed double act here. So South Cambridgeshire District Council Cabinet members, could you please indicate if you're happy to accept the minutes from the meeting held on the 23rd of June 2026 as a true and accurate record of the meeting? And these are found on the South Cambs agenda on page 3 to 21. 3 to 21. I'll move approval of them as a correct record from the chair if there are no objections. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Mills, thank you very much indeed. Do members approve the minutes? Anyone wish to vote against? Anyone abstaining? Cabinet therefore agrees to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 23rd of June as correct record by affirmation. Thank you. Moving on to update from Scrutiny and Overview Committee. The meeting was held on the 14th of June. I think it was quite a long and I think very effective meeting actually. The reports I heard of it were excellent. So Councillor Dr. Richard Williams, thank you very much for coming this evening. Would you like to introduce your report, please?
Thank you very much, Leader. Yes, we had a long but very thorough meeting the night before the football. So we had a bit more time maybe than the City Council Committee. But the report is before you, and I wouldn't propose to go through the whole of the report because obviously it's fairly lengthy. But we had, just to give a summary, a very wide-ranging discussion of the interaction between the plan, or the draft plan in particular, and then the broader planning framework, so the MPBF changes, and also the Development Corporation. We analysed the various sections of the plan. We looked at the overall development strategy, which I think there was broad agreement on, but members raised a number of questions which are covered in the report. We considered individual sites and settlements. We talked particularly about Camborne and the impact of East-West Rail. We also spent a considerable amount of time discussing the Grange Farm development, particularly the impact, or rather the relationship of the policy to the A505, which I know officers are taking forward, and some members were concerned about the lack of reference to the 505, and officers undertook to look at that. We looked at climate change, biodiversity and green spaces. We covered a number of points of the policy. We particularly looked at the 20% biodiversity net gain, which I think was welcomed by members of the committee. I've had some subsequent discussion with officers about the impact that would have on developer contributions, which has been very fruitful and very useful. We talked about infrastructure. A few questions were raised about parking policies and the slight change in the draft plan, which doesn't include default parking standards, whereas our current plan does. So we had some discussion about that, and I think officers might refer to that in their presentation. Broadly, very supportive of what the plan was doing, but some questions were raised about that. Otherwise, I think the report speaks for itself, Leader. I would just say, actually, before I finish, I should say thank you to officers who spent an awful lot of time with us on that Thursday, and obviously have spent enormous amounts of time preparing the plan.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you to all the members of the Scrutiny and Overview meeting. I now adjourn the South Cambridgeshire meeting, and then we're going to reconvene under the chair of Councillor Thornborough of Cambridge City Council.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. So we're now on item 6, public questions. 2 questions have been received for Cambridge City Council. Those 2 questions have also been sent to South Cambridgeshire District Council, who have also received a 3rd question. As we are holding separate meetings of our Cabinet, each local authority's separate speaking scheme will be followed. Firstly, the questions will be taken under Cambridge City Council. I'd like to welcome Anna Williams, CEO of CamCycle. Your question has been published and circulated to Cabinet members in advance of the meeting. As the question falls within my portfolio responsibility, I will provide the response. Following my response, you will have up to 1 minute to ask supplementary question. A bell will sound when the allotted time has expired. The same arrangement will apply to responses and supplementary questions throughout this item. Would you like to introduce yourself first?
Sorry. Good evening, Cabinet members. My name is Anna Williams and I'm here representing CamCycle, the cycle advocacy charity, and our 1,600 members, as well, of course, as thousands of other people who already cycle or who'd like to cycle here in Greater Cambridge. The question we've submitted concerns the cycle parking policy within the proposed submission for the local plan, and the fact that many of the policy statements around cycle parking are in the supporting information rather than the policy itself, and therefore will be unenforceable. Having heard last week about a family in the new development of Darwin Green who have actually bought a car because their cycle storage is not big enough for the cargo bike they wanted to buy, we would like to ensure that situations like this are avoided in future developments, and as many people who would like to ride are able to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to thank you for your contribution and for the helpful feedback CamCycle has provided on the local plan so far, which has helped officers to make a number of improvements to the plan. As a strong advocate of active travel, I agree with you that we should do everything we can to encourage cycling, and having somewhere secure, accessible and convenient to park your bikes is often an ignored aspect of it. It wasn't surprising that the issue of cycle parking was raised many times throughout our recent consultation. People told that the minimum cycling requirements should be increased and asked us to make changes to our proposed design criteria to ensure cycle parking is well located, secure, safe and accessible for all. In response to this feedback, we made several changes to the cycle and vehicle parking policy to ensure it is clear, unambiguous and enforceable, drawing all the views put forward. The policy principles are clearly stated and they are accompanied by detailed supporting text to help applicants and planning officers understand how well allocated, secure, accessible cycle parking can be achieved in practice. The policy doesn't stand alone and should be read alongside other policies in the plan. For example, our People and Place Responsive Design Policy, which includes general requirement for inclusive and healthy design and designing out crime. Together they create a strong presumption that good cycling parking will be provided. Officers have carefully considered all the suggestions put forward by CamCycle, and our view is that the policy in the proposed submission plan sets the right principles for cycle parking design, whilst retaining some flexibility on how these are delivered on the ground. This policy needs to work for all applicants, no matter how small, large or complex. We welcome the suggestion made around management and maintenance plans. The importance of securing the right management and maintenance arrangements have been recognised throughout the plan, but a specific reference in relation to cycle parking would be helpful. Would be a helpful addition to this policy, and subject to the agreement of Cabinet, I will ask officers to address this in the final version. Anna, you now have 1 minute if you'd like to reply. So 2 minutes, so 1 minute.
Thank you. Yeah, I wonder if you could just talk a little bit more then about so some of the wording that is in the supporting information. You're saying that can be used within the planning process when you're assessing developments and whether they adhere to it. The planning committees will be able to look at that supporting information as well as just the policies in seeing how it aligns. Or secondly, how much scope is there now at this stage of the local plan process for sort of slight tweaks to wording before it's submitted to government at the end of the year?
Thank you very much. So I've been on the planning committee for 8 years, and in the current local plan there is supporting information, and I've often referred to that, and I would really encourage all committee members to become familiar of the supporting information, which is actually on what the policies are based. So I would strongly recommend that references made to the supporting information whenever necessary, and particularly when to familiarise about the detail of what is good. So, but this is a time for further discussions. So I think the points that you have made have been very clear. So there may be a chance to bring this up a bit further. And also, we will definitely be. I've recommended about the management policy to bring forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now I'd like to welcome Sarah Hughes, Campaign Officer of Cambridgeshire Sustainable Travel Alliance. I'll provide the following. Would you like to come up and introduce yourself first? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So as the Chair said, my name is Sarah Hughes. I'm the Campaign Officer for Cambridgeshire Sustainable Travel Alliance. We're a group of 30 organisations that campaign for a transport network that protects our future and offers a genuine choice over how we make journeys. I'm here today to ask a question about the sections in the local plan and the Greater Cambridge Transport Strategy on bus transport, the policies and the lists of planned infrastructure, which need, in our view, to be strong enough to bring about development that truly minimises reliance on the private car if the local plan's vision for Greater Cambridge is to be achieved. And in particular, I'm interested in whether the sections on bus transport will bring about the frequent, reliable bus services residents in new developments will need for the bus to be a realistic option.
Thank you very much for your comprehensive question. So, your specific question refers to the new sites in Grange Farm and North Cambridge, and I know the aspects of bus provision are of concern to residents in rural areas and urban areas, but I know that there are additional issues that will be faced by Grange Farm and Camborne North because of the context in the rural setting of around our city. So my answer now is just going to be quite concise because I want to allow the Cabinet member for South Cambs to go into a bit more detail. But I can assure you that the provision to provide the best quality bus provision in the city is of real importance to us. And we will be working very closely with the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority as the Greater Cambridge Transport Strategy to ensure that we get the best possible submission regarding the bus provision that we hope to get later on in the year. Thank you. So, would you like to come back? We have another minute, Sarah.
We understand that some further modelling is ongoing regarding the transport strategy. Do you have any information about the timing of when that modelling will be available?
I'm afraid I am aware of further modelling, and I think it will be. I think we'll be much more aware about the outcome of that. Is probably in line with the programme that's set by the the Combined Authority. So I think that will probably be in the Transport Committee, the next Transport Committee at the Combined Authority, which I'm not sure exactly when it is, but we can find out and give you that information in advance of that coming out. Thank you. So, thank you. That concludes Cambridge City Council's public speaking section. I will adjourn Cambridge City's Cabinet meeting to enable South Cambridgeshire District Council Cabinet to convene under the chair of Councillor Bridget Smith.
Thank you very much indeed. So, under South Cambridgeshire District Council, there's a maximum of 15 minutes for public questions. Each speaker is allowed 3 minutes to speak and 1 supplementary. I don't think we put a time restraint on the supplementary. And we'll take the questions in the order that they have been received. So the first question's from Stephen Mallison, who's not able to be here tonight, but he's asked for me to read out his question on his behalf. And once I've done that, I will then ask Councillor Henry Batchelor to respond. So, East-West Rail is described by government as nationally significant infrastructure, yet its southern approach into Cambridge carries serious unresolved local costs. This is Mr. Mallinson's words. The University of Cambridge has raised significant concerns about the impact of the proposed route on the operation of the Mullard Radio Astronomy Observatory, with no mitigation solution yet identified. The Barbastell bat population at Everton Woods Special Area of Conservation is similarly threatened, alongside the wider construction disruption facing South Cambridgeshire communities. The government's own Lovegrove report reviewed the failures behind HS2 and recommended greater transparency on major infrastructure projects so that costs and benefits can be properly scrutinised before irreversible commitments are made. Given these risks, what visibility has this council had of the financial case for East West Rail in the form of a business case and traffic or passenger projections? If none has been provided, will the Cabinet press the Department for Transport and East West Rail Company as a matter of urgency to release this information without further delay so that South Cambridgeshire residents can weigh the benefits of the scheme against its costs? Over to you, Councillor Batchelor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. And as Mr Mallison isn't here, we will supply a written answer, which for completeness I can now read out for the benefit of the meeting. And that is that East West Rail Company has advised the Council that the outline business case will need to be submitted to the Department for Transport in advance of the Development Consent Order application. This is likely to take place after the design has been substantially developed or frozen. The Council therefore anticipates that further detailed information on the case for the scheme, its anticipated benefits, environmental impacts and proposed mitigation to become available when the Development Consent Order application is submitted to the Department for Transport and the application documents are published. The Council will continue to seek appropriate transparency from the East West Rail Company and the Department for Transport and will scrutinise the evidence once it becomes publicly available through the Development Consent Order process. So quite wordy and a bit of jargon, but hopefully Mr Mallison will understand where we're coming from. Thank you.
Thank you, and we do still have the same Cabinet member responsible for East West Rail, so that gives some continuity. Okay, so moving on to the second question from Anna Williams. Anna, come forward again. Do you want to present it again, or are you happy just as published and as we've already heard, or do you want to? We're welcome to speak again.
I'll read a slightly bit more. If
that's fine. Yep, by all means.
Thank you. So as before, just a reminder that I'm here representing CamCycle, the cycle advocacy charity, and our 1,600 members, as well as thousands of other people who already cycle or who would like to do so in Greater Cambridge. We welcome improvements to the cycle parking policies in the local plan, which will enable many more people of all ages and abilities in our region to ride and to safely store their cycles at home, at work and at other destinations. Just this month, we've been speaking to people living in developments built within the last few years and finding examples of families that have bought a car for school journeys because the storage provided within their home was not large enough to fit the cargo bike they wanted to buy. We have to avoid this outcome in future by planning for the city and the journeys we want to see and ensuring that all those who would like to cycle have the choice to do so, enabled by the buildings, places and routes they use. However, CamCycle members who have had previous experience with the planning service, either interacting with it or working for it, raised concern that too much of the cycle parking text is supporting information rather than policy and thus will not be enforceable. Sentences that include must or should that set standards need to be part of the policy. This applies to points 10.24, 10.25 and 10.626, which are worded in a different way to the rest of the supporting information and should be part of policy with statements like cycle parking must be at least as convenient to access as car parking. It must not be sited where it obstructs pedestrians, wheeling, cycling or vehicle movement, and so on. And there's a big list which you have already all read. We also note that the statement on residential garages contradicts the policy and guidance given above, as an additional 1 metre at the end of a garage or 650 to 750 millimetres at the side of a garage will not meet policy 1CV1H, the need for cycle parking to accommodate all types of cycles, or policy 1CV2B, be easy to access news. And this is another thing we heard from residents in Darwin Green about sort of how to squeeze their bikes past cars or past bins and kind of, difficulties getting larger cycles out. So the question, again, it was, please could the shared planning service and existing and future councils with planning responsibility amend policy 1CV cycle and vehicle parking so that cycle parking statements containing must and should are enforceable policy which will deliver the safe, accessible and convenient cycle parking needed by our region's residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Batchelor.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. And sorry, I can't look at you. I physically have to face forward to speak into the mic, so I'm not being rude. So I think Councillor Thornborough did give quite a comprehensive response to the question the first time it was asked. But what I will respond is just to highlight a few points. One, I think during the last public consultation we ran earlier this year, we got a lot of comments around cycle parking and more generally cycling itself. So we know it's something that people, certainly in South Cambridgeshire, the more rural area, are very keen to explore and for us to take note of in the local plan. We did make some changes following that public consultation response, but obviously clearly we do need to specifically reference cycle parking. And so with the indulgence of our cabinet here, I would suggest that we do amend that in the final version before we publish it, to specifically mention cycle parking in the management and maintenance plans. So yeah, that's my response. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Do you have a supplementary for us, please?
Sorry, I was too busy writing notes. So you're amending the management policy, or this policy that I've, sorry, which was it? ICV, or was that a different policy you were talking about amending?
So the suggestion was that we amend the management and maintenance plans around development so that they specifically reference cycle parking, because I think that's one thing that was missing that I think could sort of answer some of the questions that you had.
So would there be any changes you would make to the policy I've requested at all, or is there no scope to amend that now?
So we can amend most things we'd like to, but I think we'll amend the relevant parts. I'm not going to go into the detail of which bits, but we'll amend the relevant parts to take into account the cycle parking.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your supplementary question. Right, now moving on to our third questioner. So thank you very much. If you'd like to come forward. Thank you. Hello. Right, we'd like to pose your question, please.
Thank you. Ooh, sorry about that. So I'm Sarah Hughes. I'm the campaign officer for Cambridgeshire Sustainable Travel Alliance. The local plan will create new communities at Grange Farm and Camborne North, where over 5,000 homes will be built, nearly 40% of the total. And the number one alternative to the car for residents in those developments is forecast to be the bus, with train coming a close second in Camborne North. Busways are planned for these developments, which will take buses swiftly to the outskirts of Cambridge. But for the bus to be a genuine alternative, the Travel Alliance believes three other ingredients are needed. The first of these is neighbourhood designs that facilitate direct and efficient bus operation. And the principles for this are outlined in a publication called Bus Services and New Residential Developments, 2nd edition. The second is measures to stop buses getting stuck in queuing motor traffic in Cambridge. And the third we consider are frequent services, at least every 15 minutes at peak times on key corridors, with 7-day-a-week operation and long operating hours. A report presented to the Combined Authority in June forecast that rather than increasing, however, more than a third of bus services across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough could need to be cut by 2035 before Camborne North is built, unless bus operating costs are reduced or more public funding for buses is found. We do acknowledge that crucial sections on buses have been added to the policies in the current version of the local plan, and that's an excellent step forward. However, we feel that detail is lacking in both the local plan and the Greater Cambridge Transport Strategy's delivery programmes on services and bus priorities. And solutions have also not yet been found to increase public funding for bus services for the long term. So we have some questions. Will the local plan, for example, so what is the ambition for service frequencies, for example, from Camborne and Grange Farm to Cambridge at peak times? What are the bus priority measures envisaged as essential infrastructure, which has been downgraded from strategic infrastructure in the local plan? And what happens to services to Grange Farm and Camborne North when S106 funding runs out? So my question is, will council leaders commit to both strengthening the key sections about bus transport in the local plan and working with the Combined Authority to strengthen the delivery programme in the Greater Cambridge Transport Strategy so that bus transport can be a genuine choice for the residents of new developments set out in the local plan, in particular the residents of Camborne North and Grange Farm?
Thank you, Sarah. Councillor Batchelor.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And again, sorry, I have to face forward. I need to speak into the mic here. So what I'd like to highlight is the strategy and the proposed submission local plan has been shaped by the location of existing and committed public transport investments that will provide the capacity needed to support growth and give future residents genuine choice about how they travel. We've also proactively focused most growth in and on the edge of Cambridge at existing new settlements and the new site proposals at Grange Farm and Camborne North, because they can achieve the critical mass needed to support local facilities and high quality public transport from the outset, so that was by design. Since the last consultation, we've worked with Cambridgeshire County Council as well as the Combined Authority to identify the transport infrastructure and mitigation needed to support these sites. That work is reflected in the infrastructure delivery plan and the local plan policies, which set clear expectations about what transport measures need to be delivered. A key principle for both of those sites is that residents should have access to frequent, reliable and attractive public transport with fast connections to key destinations. The policies also make clear where developments will be expected to contribute towards wider strategic transport improvements. Clearly, not every single detail is going to be determined at this stage. Some elements will need to be refined through the planning application process as more detailed transport modelling is undertaken and the phasing of development becomes clearer. But looking ahead, we'll continue working closely with the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority, as well as the Greater Cambridge Transport Strategy develops, in parallel with this local plan ahead of its anticipated submission later in the year. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah, do you have a supplementary?
My supplementary question relates to services again. We feel very strongly that, for example, a busway will be of limited use without frequent services. Would Greater Cambridge Shared Planning consider illustrating perhaps what the services might be on those new corridors in the infrastructure delivery framework? Currently there's a ballpark figure for how much will be spent operating those services annually, but it would be really interesting to see what that translated to in terms of services at peak times and whether those services will run on Sundays, things that really matter to bus users.
Do you want to have a bash at that, Councillor Batchelor, or do you want Mr Kelly to come in?
I can say a few words briefly. Yeah. So obviously the detail at this stage of the local plan, we're not going to have absolutely everything in there, including the frequency of travel. I think that would very much come later on down the line. But clearly if the infrastructure is there to have public transport and bus services, then obviously, we would work with the relevant authorities, in this case the Combined Authority, who have the Greater Cambridge Transport Strategy to make sure they are as frequent and as convenient for people living there as possible. It's clearly one of the aims we have. We're trying to get people to move out of using cars and use public transport as much as possible. So having that as accessible as possible is always going to be a key. But as I said, a lot of the detail at this stage is going to be lacking because we're quickly too early in the process to talk in that level of detail.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to bring in Steve Kelly, because, with the best will in the world, quite a lot of this is outside of our control, so we just need to be clear about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, just really to add to what Councillor Batchelor has said, clearly the level of detail that you've requested is something for a plan that exists over a 20-year time horizon that we can't fix in policy. Councillor Batchelor has made clear there is clearly ongoing work with the Combined Authority who have responsibility for buses and indeed the commissioning of buses potentially going forwards. So the plan makes an enabling space for that, but the planning application process will define the need for support for those buses associated with the phrasing as the answer sets out, and the Combined Authority working with all agencies, including the council, will obviously seek to plan and optimise bus transport in the years ahead.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Sarah. And I can't underestimate the value of lobby groups like represented this evening in enforcing the hands of people who might not be quite as willing as we are to provide the best in active travel and public travel. So you have an important part to play in this as well. Thank you. So this meeting will now adjourn, and we will reconvene under the chair of Councillor Thornbury of Cambridge City Council.
Thank you very much. Just before I go on to the next item, I've been handed a note to say that the next Combined Authority Transport Committee is in September, and I'd like to reiterate what Councillor Smith said about the value of groups like the Sustainable Travel Alliance and CamCycle in highlighting issues that we all feel very strongly about. So we appreciate you coming here and going to meetings at the Combined Authority. Thank you. So item 7 is the Greater Cambridge Local Plan Proposed Submission Regulation 19 publication. So it's a substantive item of our agenda. This involves 2 separate cabinet meetings concurrently. The arrangements for this item will follow a similar approach to that used for public speaking. I will introduce the report on behalf of Cambridge City Council in my capacity as Cabinet Member for Planning and Transport for South Cambridgeshire District Council, which is being chaired by Councillor Smith. Councillor Batchelor will introduce the report on behalf of that authority. We will then receive joint officer presentation addressed to both cabinets. Following the presentation, Cambridge City Council cabinet members wishing to speak will be invited to do so, followed by South Cambridgeshire District Council cabinet members. Speakers should therefore address their comments through the relevant chair when invited to speak. So I think this is it feels like we're beginning to get close to the end of a very long process which started soon after we adopted the current local plan, which was in 2018. And I think the achievement to get here with such an amazing document, and it truly is amazing. I know local authorities, architects and planners across the country are looking to us because of the ambition we have in the local plan, backed up by evidence. Not only is it one of the most ambitious in the country, the achievement for the 2 local authorities, cross-boundary, cross-party, working collectively in coalition together to achieve this is really quite something. And Councillor Toomey Hawkins is not here now because she has retired, but I really want to thank her for all of her time that she's put in over years to get to the position we are in now. I'd also like to remind us that what sustainable development is all about, and it's listed in the National Planning Policy Framework, and which gets regularly updated, and it remains in that document. So the objective of sustainable development can be summarised as meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. I think I often go back to that to remind us why we are here, why we're putting this document together. The other important thing is to understand is that sustainable development covers 3 really important areas. It has an economic objective, social objective, and environmental objective. And we collectively put equal weight on all of those as we put this document together and the policies and select the sites. Particularly the economic development objective includes not just growth, but innovation and improved productivity. And I know a focus on those will help all of our existing companies and existing jobs and workers in this area. I will also like to say that we've just got the most fantastic planning team. They're professional and experts and a pleasure to work with. But they also listen to everyone, not just residents, raising points about extra protected parks or cycling provision, but also businesses, local organisations, developers and councillors. It is not just the cabinet member for planning who has been inputting into this. It's all of those people that I've just listed. And when you go through the amendments, through the different consultations, you can absolutely see how they have all been picked up, from the scrutiny committees to all the ward councillors. So again, I'd just like to thank the amazing team we have in the Shared Planning Service. Thank you. I'll now I'll adjourn the City Council's Cabinet meeting to enable South Cambridgeshire District Council to convene under the chair of Councillor Bridget Smith.
Thank you very much indeed. So just before I bring in Councillor Henry Batchelor, I'd just like to reiterate your thanks to the extraordinary planning team, because they are extraordinary. And I'm sure they won't be surprised to know that other councils, when they're starting on their local plan journey, are looking to ours for the inspiration about how to do it in a really inspirational, ambitious way. So we're already hearing other councils, including London councils, saying that their starting point was to look at the work that you've done on our behalf. So well done. And thank you also for mentioning Councillor Toomey Hawkins, who I think this has been her life for the last 8 years. And I'm very sad that she's not here to see this final stage. But mind you, she's reclaimed her life, which the rest of us haven't done. And I'd just like to mention before I pass on to Henry that we're sitting in Camborne here, which is now 25 years old. I think I'm right in saying. And had a slow start, but actually is now somewhere really exciting to live, and where you're hard pressed to find a house for sale here because people like it so much. And those of you who are new to South Cambridgeshire Hall will have come past a development we're currently doing jointly with Hills, that which will deliver 40% affordable housings, which will be built to passive house standards. So, we are massively ambitious for Camborne, not just as somewhere to live, but for somewhere that becomes a destination in its own right. And obviously, with the inclusion of East West Rail and the station here, Camborne becomes really, really significant in the whole story of South Cambridgeshire and Cambridge City as well. So on that note, over to you, Councillor Batchelor. I hope I haven't stolen your thunder.
Yeah, I was going to say all of that.
Sorry.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, I'm not going to add too much more to what the two leaders have said. But yeah, other than start with thanking Toomey. I mean, she's obviously got us to this point. I've come in at the last minute like a goal hanger and knocked one in. So yeah, I'll quite happily take the plaudits for all of that. Obviously, the officers, I just can't thank them enough for putting together what we have in front of us. I mean, this is I think 6 years of hard work to get us to this point. And I think it's been mentioned before, our planning department gets, awarded and recognised nationally for the work it does. And it's because of documents like this that they are recognised as such. So, I'm very proud to put my name on the front of this document. So to get down to the detail, I mean, what we're looking at here and what we're asking the two cabinets to do is to approve this version of the local plan to go out again to public consultation for the final time before we submit it for inspection to a government inspector. I believe the officers are going to give a brief introduction to the report, where I'm sure they'll highlight what some of the changes from the first draft that was put into the public domain have been. Yeah, as I said, it's a huge amount of work. You can probably tell from the number of officers we have in the room with us today, the sort of the gargantuan effort and the team needed to deliver that has taken. So, I sort of fully commend the paper we have in front of us. And yeah, we'll hand back to you, Leader.
Thank you very much indeed. So I am now unconvening South Cambridgeshire meeting and handing over to Councillor Thornborough to reconvene Cambridge City Council's meeting.
Thank you. Before I ask City Cabinet members if they wish to speak, I'd like to welcome the officers here and ask if there is anything further they wish to add. Stephen Kelly, would you like to start?
Thank you, Leader. I don't have anything further to add. Obviously, as you are aware, we thought it helpful to remind the cabinets of the journey that we've been on in the last year or so, certainly since consultation. And I'll pass to my colleagues to do that at the right time. But I would echo thanks from me to the team for everything that has been produced in front of you. I know it's a Herculean effort.
Okay, now I'll introduce the team. This was Stephen Kelly, he's a joint Director of Planning. We have Heather Jones, Deputy Director of Planning, John Dixon, Planning Policy Manager, Stuart Morris, Team Leader, Max Laverack, Team Leader, Lizzie Wood, Team Leader, Terry D'Souza, Team Leader, and Lauren Wilkinson, also Team Leader.
I think we should clap them.
So, are you doing a presentation now? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we thought we would just run through a little bit how we got here and where we're going next. We gave very substantial presentations to the two scrutiny committees last week, so this is a slightly shorter one. So as has been mentioned, we've been on this plan-making journey for several years, and it has included a number of major public consultations. Some of you might remember when we started in the Corn Exchange back in 2020, and we've done 3 full public consultations to get to this point. Most recently, the draft plan consultation earlier this year. Our next step will be consultation on the proposed submission plan, known as the Regulation 19 stage for us planning geeks. This is effectively consulting on the plan that the councils would be proposing to put forward for adoption. We are proposing to go out between the 3rd of August and the 25th of September, and that's for an 8-week period. And then we would bring representations received and the key issues that are raised and so on back to members and full council in November and December. Our key backstop is, as a legacy local plan, the government has set as a requirement to submit this plan by the end of the year. And we are currently on track to do that, but that's why that timetable has been put together to achieve that. And then after the end of December, we would be in the hands of the planning inspector, who would carry out an examination to consider whether the plan is sound. I think it's worth reflecting, as has also already been mentioned in this meeting, the scale and the helpfulness of the representations we received. So we had around 8,000 comments earlier this year. Many have provided a lot of information to help improve the plan, and there are many objections to the policies and proposals in the plan as well. All of them have been carefully considered, summarised and responded to in the information in front of you today. The next consultation will be slightly different. This is the proposed submission regulation 19 stage, and what we'll be seeking views on is whether the plan is sound, and that soundness is defined in national planning policy, and whether it meets the legal requirements for preparing a plan. So it's more of a formal stage on the actual proposal of the plan rather than some of the more open consultations we've done to get here. We'll still be doing the sort of engagements you've seen before, responding to what we've set out in our statement of community involvement, but we'll also be getting out there and holding a number of events with our main aim of making sure we help people to understand what the proposals are and how they can comment. In terms of the plan itself, in terms of the overall strategy, we haven't significantly changed it from the draft plan stage. The number of homes and jobs has been tweaked to reflect changes in the national standard method, but that isn't a substantial change. The strategy regarding the sites identified is also the same as that proposed in the draft plan, which identifies a number of sites looking to make the most of the available brownfield land within the city, identifies a number of urban extensions to the city, including the airport site, which has become available. Apart from release of land proposed at the Biomedical Campus and one at the Baybrook Campus, it doesn't propose the release of green belts on the edge of the city, because we do not think there are exceptional circumstances justified to do that. Other sites identified include the new settlements that we have already had in the plans, and those sites like Moorstone, Waterbeach will make significant contributions to the plan period going forward, but we've added further sites. So additional development at Camborne, responding to the Eastward Trail proposals, and a new settlement in the southeast of the district, near to many key employment locations, and at the southeast, benefiting from the South East Transport Scheme proposals. We've also responded to other issues, including logistics, identifying 2 sites for allocation on the A14 corridor. And we reviewed a lot of responses on these sites and very much refined the policy approaches within the plan, in the plan before you now. On the key themes of the plan, there was a lot of support for the aspirations in the plan around climate change, biodiversity and so on, and those ambitious policies are retained in the proposed submission plan before you, with a number of amendments to make the policies more effective. It's fair to say some of those standards which go beyond national policy to receive objections, but we think they reflect a sound approach responding to the needs and aspirations of our area. We further developed our standards regarding green infrastructure and biodiversity. We have fleshed out policies around well-being, such as the affordable workspace and skills plans policies, and refined the design policies in great places, looking at issues around security. Active travel was a huge theme, as we've heard earlier today, which we've sought to respond to as well. On the jobs and the homes, again, mainly refinements. We heard a lot at the scrutiny committees around housing and multiple occupation for Cambridge, and refined the policies very clearly to respond to the issues arising around that issue. On jobs, again, to make the policy more effective generally, and those issues about supporting delivery. Infrastructure, a big theme. We've really backed up the plan with much more detailed infrastructure delivery information. An infrastructure delivery plan is in the background documents, and those requirements have been very clearly now reflected in the site policies as well. An ongoing theme has been, how does this plan relate to the wider world? Again, we've heard about the relationship with the Combined Authorities Transport Strategy. It's fair to say our local plan is dependent on the delivery of infrastructure by other bodies. But the evidence behind the plan has sought to very clearly understand that. We've done a lot of work looking at water and the delivery of new water supplies to make sure our chalk streams are protected, and our delivery trajectory responds to that very clearly. A lot of work engaging with bodies like Angling Water, whose plans will now to respond to the infrastructure needs of growth to make sure that infrastructure is available to support the development. We did have very significant discussions at both scrutiny committees, which were really helpful. We've identified a number of issues, and in some cases some changes which we'd hope to resolve through the delegated matters on the decision in front of you. So on Camborne, there was some requests to clarify the role of the mapping. It wasn't very clear what some of the proposals were, so we want to label those maps better. There was requests to look at the Spices site near Sawston and refer to opportunities to get better connectivity to that site in particular. We could look at that wording. On EV charging, I think there was a request for us to continue to liaise with the local area energy plan, which is being produced by the County Council. On parking, I think we can look at the wording, particularly how it covers parking displacement, to make sure that's clear in the policy. And there was quite a bit of discussion around the nature of the consultation. As I mentioned earlier, we will be looking to carry out events and use the materials in a similar way, but reflecting very much the different stage we're at now. And in the Cambridge, we discussed and agreed to look at making sure the transport provisions in the CBC policy were particularly made clear, and we're looking to amend that to make sure those requirements are clear, reflecting the evidence that we've published on what infrastructure is necessary to deliver that site. On climate change, there was a request that one of the examples of things that could be used, I think probably mostly regard to cooling, was splash pads, so we can look at that issue. On meanwhile uses, there was a clarification asked for in terms of encouraging the engagement with stakeholders in particular when looking at meanwhile uses. There was a request on infrastructure and transport, I think probably from both scrutinies really, to make sure we continue to engage with the combined authority as the transport plan evolves, and again that's come up today. And on water, members are really reflecting that we should continue to engage with the water infrastructure bodies, particularly through the water scarcity group, which was set up to bring groups together to make sure water was properly looked at, and we will continue to engage with that group on an ongoing basis. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So, does any Cambridge City Cabinet members wish to speak on this item? Councillor Gawthorpe-Wood.
So the points that you've put up regarding Cambridge, I assume they're the ones that came out from the scrutiny committee last week. You've taken on board all the things that came out of the scrutiny committee last year. That's what I just wanted to check. Which was when I was on the scrutiny committee.
Just to clarify, yeah, absolutely. And if you look at Appendix E, I think it is, what you'll see is, and some of those comments from scrutiny were echoed also in the comments that arose through the consultation process. So that's a comprehensive summary of what we've changed.
Well, I have a specific question for Cambridge City Cabinet members. During the CAM cycle public question was regarding, I made the comment that we would consider the appropriate management and maintenance agreements with regard to shared use cycle parking. Does anybody have any objections to that, or can we take that forward? Okay, that's everyone nodding in agreement on that one. Okay. In that case, I will move on. Now, city councillors who have speaking rights and those who have registered to speak will be given an opportunity after the South Cambridgeshire District Council councillors have spoken. This meeting is adjourned and will convene under the chair of Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much. Righty-ho. So there's going to be an opportunity for the chair of South Cambridgeshire Scrutiny and Overview Committee to speak in a little while. And for non-cabinet members speak in a little while. So we're just asking, are there any questions from the cabinet members of South Cambridgeshire District Council? They're not usually quiet. Normally have lots to say. No? Okay. They're obviously completely satisfied with everything Jonathan's told them, and no questions. So thank you all. So the meeting will now adjourn and then reconvene under the chair of Councillor Thornborough of Cambridge City Council.
Thank you. We will now follow the constitutional speaking rights of Cambridge City Council at Cabinet, which is as follows. 1. Chair of the City Council's Performance, Asset and Strategy Scrutiny and Overview, Councillor Karen Young. Then 2. City leaders of the opposition parties, Councillor Bennett, Green Party, and then Councillor Bick of the Liberal Democrats, and then any other non-cabinet members for Cambridge City Council. So Councillor Karen Young, Chair of Cambridge City Council's Performance, Asset and Strategy Overview and Scrutiny Committee, do you wish to address the meeting?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I will. And I'll be brief because various comments have already been made by John Dixon. So I'd like to start by thanking officers' patience with us in scrutiny and answering all our questions. I'll just go through quickly things that perhaps weren't said by John. So we really supported the internalisation of transport within the Cambridge East development. That means as much as possible, the new people on the new development stayed within that development to go to school, etc. And we were very concerned as well with the links or the effect of that on the general traffic existing in Cambridge. So that internalisation was very much supported. The other thing is we very much supported the flexibility in the plan in relation to North East Cambridge or Hartree, if that does come back, which would be great if it did, because it would provide a lot of very sustainable housing very close to public transport in the centre of the city. But there is the flexibility within the plan for that to come back and then have a policy to support it within the local plan. So that was very much appreciated. And then apart from that, things that have not been mentioned by John are we really commended the overall approach to climate change and the ambition in the plan, particularly the measures. It was a very hot day when we had our scrutiny committee, so we particularly commended the cooling and the mitigation of heat island effects within the plan. We also very much supported the 20% biodiversity net gain. That's really was seen as a good thing, and in particular the urban greening factor, which seemed like a very good way of measuring and ensuring that thing happened in new developments. The other things that we commended were the neurodiversity measures for new developments, the neurodiversity architecture, seen as a very good thing. Then the only other thing to say really is on infrastructure and transport. We were very much commending the idea, the timing of infrastructure delivery, that it kept pace with new developments. That's very much a concern of members of the public when they talk about new developments. And we registered our concern about transport in the CPCA and as a basis for the plan, and also the water scarcity issues, which Jonathan already mentioned. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Young. I think they were all comments rather than questions. I just also would like to say that the issue about 20% biodiversity net gain and whether that was at risk through the National Planning Policy Framework, possible revisions, was discussed at the Planning Advisory Committee, who very, very clearly and strongly said that we need to stick with 20% biodiversity net gain and fight for that. So we're doing that. Thank you very much. Councillor Bennett, as leader of the main opposition party at Cambridge City Council, would you like to address this meeting?
Thank you, Chair. I would love to address this meeting. I have miscellaneous number of points. Please bear with me. Like you, I want to thank the officers for their diligent work under extremely trying national conditions. We are grateful, even if everything we do seems to be saying, why haven't you done that and why haven't you added that? And I'd like to ask about the deletion of the flexible working policy. Cambridge, under lockdown, had a rate of home working that was double the national average. The planners are right to say that it has declined, but it's still at a very high level. It's also particularly important to groups with protected characteristics. I am disabled, I am a carer. I could not work without flexible working and earn a living. And for many people who are disabled or have a disabled family member, flexible working is still highly important. It also adds to resilience to companies who may be affected by things as random as Paralympics and Olympics, where a number of banks and other financial institutions had to ask their employees to work at home during disruption from that. It's also particularly important because with factory farming, there is a risk to antibiotic resistance, There is also risk of another pandemic. I hope that we will never need to have another lockdown, but we cannot really rule it out. And I feel that the flexible working policy should remain. So that's my first point. The second point is that I'm less concerned about making the plan we have 1% better. I'm more concerned about how it stands up to the planning inspector scrutiny, and whether all the good stuff we've got in ends up on the cutting room floor. So I'd like to ask a couple of questions based on the sustainability appraisal report. I cannot say I've read all 799 pages. And I will admit that for once I have succumbed to using AI to summarise the document. I'm very ashamed of it, but it's the only way I could get through. And the things I want to pull out is it's stated in this document that hotels are non-viable. How sure are we of that? Because I have 2 hotel planning applications coming forward in what is one very small ward, of which I have the honour to be councillor. How much of a problem is that? Is that going to derail our local plan? Do we need to adjust for that? I noticed that even in Abbey Ward, 6 miles away, I have been recipient of very heavily lobbying on alternative sites for logistics operators on the A14. How robust is our site selection there? Is it going to stand up? I also note the reliance on the Cambridge Water Group, which is an excellent advisory body, but it's not the body that has to be implementing water scarcity solutions. That is in the hands of Anglian Water and DEFRA. We have no control over those bodies. How secure is the plan based on that? And I also note widely raised concerns about AI centres. Can we not strengthen our policies? It seems ridiculous to be citing any AI centres at all in the Cambridge area, the driest region in the UK. And also, AI centres are very low density employment. They are more suited to a rural area such as Wales. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. I think I'll hand over to the officer team to answer those questions.
Thank you. I'll ask Jonathan Dixon just to comment on a number of those areas and perhaps, if necessary, comment further. I think just in respect of the very last point, though, about the economy, effectively talking to the economy and how the economy of Cambridge is forecast to grow, it is a complex picture. Metadata and so forth is a part of the expertise of the Cambridge region. And clearly, as we go forwards, we need to monitor non-domestic water consumption and the technologies that are coming forward within data centres to try and reduce that consumption pattern. But for now, there is an element of which a knowledge-intensive growth strategy has a reliance, whether it's local or indeed national, on the ability to process big data. But I'll ask Jonathan to talk about the themes that you picked up on, which is about homeworking and how we factor that into not only the assessment of need, but also the policies in the plan on design and so forth, and to comment on design, logistics, and the water scarcity group.
So the remote working policy, that was a proposal that we included in the first proposals in 2021. And it was actually something that we determined not to put in the draft plan last year. So to be clear, that wasn't in the draft plan we consulted on in earlier this year. We set out the reasons for that in our topic paper. which was effectively after having considered comments at that stage before the last stage, it was determined that it wasn't a particularly effective policy proposal that we could put in the plan, partly because of the amount of things you can now do under permitted development. So there are a lot of things you could already do if you wanted to pursue remote working measures in your dwelling. And that included what you could do in terms of employment hubs as well. Therefore, we also considered that a lot of those co-working was being looked at as part of community facilities and so on, shared uses. So really it was because, why didn't we bring that forward into the draft plans? Because we felt that policy wasn't necessary to achieve the overall goals that we were looking for when we put that forward. So we continue to take the view that a standalone policy isn't necessary on that issue. On the viability, you're quite correct. One of the more marginal viability uses in that whole plan viability assessment was hotels, but it was marginal. It wasn't saying that hotels wouldn't come forward or they couldn't be made viable. It was simply highlighting they were less viable than in the terms of that study than some other uses. So it's not saying hotels won't come forward or they won't be able to contribute properly to any policy requirements we put forward. On the logistics side, so as I mentioned in my presentation, we identified 2 sites on the A14 corridor, having reviewed a number of sites, at least 4 in that location and more broadly across the area. Through the evidence presented before you, we think they are the best 2 sites. The evidence we've looked at does show they are deliverable and so on. So we do think those are the ones that should be included and they respond to clear evidence of need. So we think they are sound elements of the plan. On the water efficiency, I think Stephen picked up on that and the water evidence. So we are very actively working with the water scarcity group. We have published another update of the water supply evidence that we worked very carefully on with government and with the water companies to make sure there was a full understanding of the available water supply, how it would be affected by the growth proposed in the plan, and how it would relate to the infrastructure plans of the water industry. Now, it is very clear that we still need those water infrastructure elements to be delivered, but the plan is quite clear that it needs those infrastructure elements in order for that development to come forward. And then on the data centres point, the plan isn't proposing specifically to allocate land for data centres, but we did, I think, make an amendment to the policy on water efficiency, particularly to reference on data centres. If they were to come forward, they'd have to come forward, as windfall sites. They would need to consider how they had used water effectively or not used water effectively, and looking at other means. But I think that is addressed in that water policy. I hope colleagues have covered off all the points.
Can I just then, thanks Jonathan, can I just come back then on the last point, which is about how resilient is this plan going to be to PINS? We've engaged with PINS, and in fact they spent nearly 2 days with us about 2 months ago with a senior inspector to discuss some of the challenges and issues related to the plan, including the issues that Jonathan's highlighted on the screen, the Development Corporation, water, transport and related matters. So insofar as we can, we believe we put forward a sound and robust plan with evidence to support it. But of course that's a matter for PINS and the examination, sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett, and thank you for officers for answering those. Councillor Timbick, leader of the Liberal Democrats opposition party at Cambridge City Council, may I please invite you to address the meeting?
Thank you, Chair. I've got a comment and a question. Taking a step back, we've got here locally, publicly elected representatives supported by professional officers at the top of their game, sitting over a mass of really high quality evidence, including an enormous amount of public input, proving, I think, our capacity for ambition and vision between us, and our capacity to work together and with others to achieve our plan. My observation is that this is local government at its best, and it's sad to think that this could be the last of such locally owned processes. According to the government, the rest of the country gets more local power, but in Greater Cambridge we get less. The question that I want to ask is about the dependencies, and in particular the one on transport infrastructure. And I do that as a member of the GCP board and the Combined Authority Transport Committee. I'm confused by this dependency because, like all dependencies, we want to knock the nail on the head and to make them enablers. We've got a draft transport strategy for Greater Cambridge, which I know we've been waiting for some time, and I've looked at it and I'm encouraged by it, and I find that it is saying the sort of things that I would expect it to say. So far, that seems to me a big tick. The second aspect of this niggles away at me, which is that the head of the Transport Authority, the Combined Authority, is also out campaigning against at least two of the pieces of infrastructure that are really vital, not only for our current local plan, but for our future local plan, the Cambourne to Cambridge busway and the Cambridge South East Transport Scheme. I think without which we couldn't be contemplating some of the things in this draft plan that we've got. And so my confusion is, can we rely on our Transport Authority to come through with the sort of language in its transport strategy, or should we be worried more about the actual campaigning that's going on against some of the core schemes that really facilitate our aims?
Thank you, Councillor Vick, for your comments on this question. I think well, the Mayor of the Combined Authority is not here to answer the question about his campaigning, and I know, we all know that we need the Greater Cambridge Transport Strategy that is being developed we need it in a format with the evidence base to support the local plan and the ambitions to improve active travel and public transport and reduce the reliance on the private car. I believe that that message has been passed on and repeated many times at the GCP board and the Combined Authority where it really needs to be heard. And my understanding is that the officers continue to press this with the officers and the consultants working on this. And yes, there has to be a bit of, we have to continue to do this as elected members, but also relying on the officers to press the point and make sure that the work is done in the right way and the evidence is as we need it coming forward. But I believe that we will get there on this, and I'm sure you will speak out at the next Transport Committee at the Combined Authority in September, should you need to. Thank you very much. I don't think there was any other points to pick up in there. So, are there any non-cabinet members from Cambridge City Council who wish to speak on this matter? I believe Councillor Tong has registered to speak and Councillor Porra. So we'll go to Councillor Tong. Do you want to speak first?
Just testing the mic. Amazing, that works well. Well, firstly, can I say thank you, both officers and members, for their work on this document, because I think there are loads of really good things here. And Obviously, I'm here to give a bit of feedback, and sometimes that may make me look a bit negative, but I do think there's lots of great stuff here. The thing I really want to discuss is the subject of HMOs in policy H/MO. I think that was very cleverly named. I think it's really good that we have done more to try and regulate and monitor HMOs, because previously, I don't think we did quite enough. I think that we kind of had lower standards of HMOs than other types of property, and it really led to developers prioritise those when often I feel it wasn't really needed. Now, the local plan itself, specifically 9.96, acknowledges that HMOs are often housing for low-income people. Often people are forced to use HMOs because there is a lack of social housing. And I think that's very, very relevant. When we're building HMOs, we are thinking about trying to make sure there's accommodation for everybody. 9.99 also implicitly recognises that a lot of migrants and refugees use HMOs. And I think that's really, really, really important. What I want to ensure is that there is housing for everybody across the city. And I think at the moment we live in quite a stratified city, where if we look, as of the other day, at our social housing stock at Cambridge City Council, we see places like Abbey, which has 1,135 homes for social houses. Arbury is 1153, whereas some areas like Castle, that's 73 council homes, and Newnham has 30. And to me, that's a bit disappointing, because I want to make sure there is housing for everyone all over the city. The city we live in is quite stratified. And I think that we need to make sure we are trying to encourage a diversity of housing types across the city, not shoving all of one particular type of housing stock into one area. Now, I wanted to quickly discuss 9.97. That was all preamble to get to my main point, but I felt it's important to establish. Now, I'm going to read out 9.97 in full. Oh, apologies, the relevant point of it. The effects of HMO concentration may vary depending on the local context and underlying housing stock. In areas dominated by traditional houses, for example, terrace streets, concentrations of HMOs may be more perceptible and have greater implications for neighbourhood amenity. And I find this statement a little disappointing, because it's very clear when traditional houses are referred to, what you're really talking about is, I don't know how to say it in a way that's proper, but houses for richer people, more traditional, more older stock, more expensive housing. And it makes me a bit sad that we have effectively implanted a policy that is encouraging us not to spread HMOs and, for example, housing stock for low-income families across the city, but to try and push it all together in one place. And I think these sorts of policies are how we've got to our current state in Cambridge, where everything is so divided, where there are areas which are dominated by housing which is for lower-income people, and there's some areas where there is just no housing at all for people with a lower income. On this topic, I also want to note, recently, I got a briefing from an officer, the officers in this room, but I won't name them, that acknowledged that there was no correlation between HMOs and antisocial behaviour, but HMOs are very much singled out for antisocial behaviour within this document. I had a search for varying wordings of antisocial behaviour, and I think it's mentioned about 4 times in the entire document, but it's very much focused on HMOs, and I think it seems a little bit targeted. And I think it's a little bit sad that we are putting houses for people who have lower incomes under what seems like extra scrutiny. Those are, I think, all the points I had to say. I wish I could wrap it up into a bit of a neater bow. But I think overall, we have done a lot of great stuff to monitor HMOs. I just wonder if we could try and make sure it's more equally spread across the city and we're not putting that extra pressure on HMOs to be monitored.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Tom. I must say I think one of your points really shows how I think the planning service does really good consultations, because when we do consultations, local organisations, residents, businesses and residents can make comments, and they can also look back after the consultation results come out to see how their comments have actually been taken on board or not. So, or you can actually find your actual comment and see whether it's taken on board. So there's complete transparency on comments and the outcome. And I also know from experience being on the planning committee that the conversations about different types of housing, whether it's for students, for workers' housing for first homes, or pod housings, it comes up constantly depending on the different areas and the different pressures. And I think that's one of the reasons why we now have the shared Greater Cambridge Shared Housing Strategy, which is probably maybe a bit more of a flexible document and can change depending on the actual requirements. So recently in Cambridge, well, for the last few years, there's been a real evidence need for 1 and 2 bedroomed homes, but now the evidence shows that it's larger homes, and that is what's being focused on. I think the evidence that was recently been brought forward regarding HMOs, the evidence shows that there is no link, there's no evidential link between things like additional antisocial behaviour or problems with waste and things like that.
We don't build HMOs. We build houses that become HMOs.
Yes, yes, it's a good point. We build homes which provide many different needs. So some homes are for student homes, some homes are for first homes for people who are coming off the streets, and some homes are shared homes, whether it's for students or for people wanting to share homes. So I think that's all I wanted to say, but thank you very much for your long comments, and appreciate you coming here. So I'd like now to hand over to Councillor Porra for your comments. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Chairs. I won't repeat things that other people have said. Obviously, I was Scrutiny Chair last year, and I'm now Chair of our Planning Committee and the Joint Development Management Committee, and I'm also Planning and Infrastructure, both for the Lib Dems. So I think tonight I just wanted to note the importance of the stepping conditions. So this idea that we absolutely don't build out unless the water and other infrastructure is there, and I'd urge Cabinet to make sure that that is a strong message we take forward for the Regulation 19 consultation. I really welcome, with my group, the data centres being strengthened, the retrofit carbon policy, and particularly the co-living policy. As Councillor Thornborough, I think, has sat on many planning committees with me, and we don't have a policy for that at all at the moment. So that, I think, respect and thanks to officers for doing that. I'd like Cabinet perhaps just to consider how we make sure that our BNG at 20%, sorry, biodiversity net gain, is robust, because we are going to have a challenge for that with the MPPF. And we are managing, I think, to go for build to rent at 40% when the MPPF is 20%. So I hope that that will come forward in the final plan. I was going to talk on HMOs. I'm not sure if, Councillor Tom's gone, I'm not sure if you've quite read the evidence base we published recently, but actually the characterisation of HMOs in Cambridge is actually slightly different in terms of income background and things like that. And for us, it's a very welcome part of our city. Not everyone can live in a family home. HMOs are critical, but I'm confident that the cross-party support now for Article 4, which I thank officers for the amount of work coming forward on that, will, I hope, lead to decent, livable, affordable ones coming forward, because often the antisocial issues that are reported about waste management, it's not the tenants, it's the managers of those properties. And at the moment, we're already seeing strengthening conditions coming forward for the bigger 7+ ones, but we need to be able to include that for the smaller ones. So I think I'd just urge Cabinet and officers, when we move to Reg 19, to make sure that we fully analyse now, when it comes to Cabinet City, the implications of how big the Article 4 is. We don't want to displace things. And actually, picking up a point Councillor Tong made, these HMOs normally are in sustainable routes because people need the public transport and can't necessarily afford or want to have a car. So to a certain extent, that's something I hope that officers and the Chair will note going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Porra. But also thank you for referring to the Planning Committee. I know I have a lot of experience of the city planning, but also the Joint Development Management Planning Committee, and I just think the committee members do work really hard at not just understanding the policies that we get to use, but actually how they can be used in the right way and looking at the evidence, which is it's a bit like the public questioner asking about the knowledge, and the way the committee members work with the officers is very interesting. And again, I know people outside of Cambridge actually say, if you want to look at democracy working in the planning system, watch our planning committees. So well done, everyone. So I'll now adjourn the City Council's Cabinet meeting to enable South Cambridgeshire District Council to convene under the chair of Councillor Bridget Smith.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd like to invite Councillor Richard Williams to speak if there's any more he needs to add. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Chair. Well, I've given my scrutiny report. Just as a normal member of the council, there was one other question I was just going to highlight. It's not so much anything that I think necessarily can be changed, but in the housing mix policy, H/HM, the point I raised personally in scrutiny is that we are including for South Cambridgeshire and actually the city indicative housing bedroom mixes, and the indicative bedroom mix is 35% 1 and 2 bed for market housing. It's significantly higher for shared ownership and social rent, so it's between 55 and 60% 1 and 2 bed for the social rented and shared ownership housing, whereas only 35% of market housing. That does slightly concern me in terms of the availability of smaller housing to buy. Now, I think, as I said in scrutiny, I understand why that policy is there, and it's partly to do with the planning practice guidance and the way local plans are required to be drafted. But I would just emphasise that I think I would like to see flexibility around that, because I would worry that we're baking in, a smaller portion of the more affordable, in a market sense, housing. The other point I've already made, but I'd just say a little bit more about the parking standards. Obviously, in a rural area like South Cambridgeshire, there will be inevitably an extent to which people need to own cars, and I think we all know as South Cambridgeshire councillors, and indeed probably city councillors as well, that displacement parking can be a problem. So I very much welcome officers looking at that aspect of it, just to make sure that we don't inadvertently make it easier for developers to bring forward proposals with inadequate parking that then lead to displacement problems that we subsequently have to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Stephen, do you want to comment on any of those?
Just to say, in respect to the point about the housing and mix, clearly market housing is driven by slightly different parameters in terms of demand than the needs assessment that underpins the kind of affordable housing dimension to it. And of course, it has, as Councillor Williams highlights, changed over time, and it will continue to change as the economy perhaps brings more people to Greater Cambridge, potentially a younger cohort with different family sizes or housing needs. And that's really why the local plan policy needs to be seen in lockstep really with the housing strategy, because both councils have a joint housing strategy. It's already been mentioned. It allows us to evolve the approach to exploring the housing mix by site and by location and so forth, recognising the concerns that Councillor Williams has picked up. And of course, you've touched already upon the planning committee's role in helping to make clear their assessment of whether that need is met well or effectively. On parking standards, I think one of the challenges the team have got is there is an enormously diverse characteristics to Greater Cambridge, from the middle of a very crowded city at times, all the way through to areas with very low accessibility for public transport, or indeed areas in our new towns where we are deliberately trying to drive a shift away from, they might be rural at the moment, but we're trying to drive a shift away from private car use. And there are solutions that will come forward through the planning committees or through the Development Corporation will need to be bespoke and appropriate, having regard to things like the transport strategy objectives as well. So this is something that I'm sure will continue to evolve, and we've tried to strike a balance in the policy for that.
Thank you very much. I think what we have done is built in flexibility, haven't we? Okay, non-cabinet members who wish to speak, I'll take Councillor Williams and then Councillor Bradnam, please. Councillor Williams. Heather Williams.
Thank you. Yes, we're not helping you by sitting next to each other, are we? But yes, so I'd just like to expand a bit on the parking situation, because the reality is we all want to see, you know, that more sustainable travel and everything else. Well, I think that's pretty much consensus across the board. But there is a reality in living in the smaller villages. You know, buses, reliable public transport, that's really financial. To make that financially sustainable is something that we're you know, a long way off. So the reality is people are going to need cars. And do you know what? Life just means that occasionally you need to use your car. So I think there is a danger of flexibility actually leaves us with nothing to rely upon when it comes to perhaps objecting to certain applications. So I think while you're sort of trying to create flexibility, you're also creating uncertainty, which the previous local plan, I think, on parking, even though that, you know, I felt, to be honest, we needed more parking provision than was allowable then. We've tried this model of if we restrict the car parking, then people won't have a car or use less cars, hence the 1.5 car parking. The reality is it's not going to work in certain areas, and it has very huge consequences when you have sort of inappropriate parking. That can be difficult for people getting around in wheelchairs or pushing prams around, but also some people may realise, some may not, that the amount of field fires that we've had recently in this harvest is a lot higher than recent times. I think there was even a sort of a random fire near Gambling Gate that wasn't even a field fire, it was a wildfire. We have situations where the fire brigade need to get onto agricultural land very, very quickly and swiftly for everybody's safety. And if people are parked in ways that I've seen in my own ward and others, that's why we're trying to promote people to park more sensibly, maybe a bit further away from their properties. If we can't get fire engines through, everybody is at risk. And that's the reality that people in the villages are living in. And I know myself over recent years, the amount of cars that are now parked on the road compared to you know, when I first moved there 10 years ago is huge. So I would appreciate if we could look a little bit more about being sort of putting more safeguards in when it comes to parking within our policies, rather than having flexibility that equally can be used against us as much as for us if we don't have a policy to fall back on. One other thing that I wanted to raise, along a similar, because it feels, you know, everyone trying to come from a different perspective that others haven't discussed, is how much has actually gone into supporting rural economy. There's a lot on farm diversification, which is great, but actually a lot of farmers still want to produce food, and it does feel like that there potentially is more we could do to support food production, something which, you know, is quite topical as well nationally. I have a lot of sympathy as well for officers and councillors across the board. We are building this on sand, with government moving that sand and collapsing it any time they feel like it. And, you know, who knows what's going to happen next with somebody's return. But I do think that we need to make sure that we're getting the balance right. We need to get it right for the city, but we need to get the villages right as well. And it does feel like there's a sort of dominance in the policy so far. And with that in mind, given the time that we are consulting, and I understand that you would need to be going to a certain dictated timetable, is there something we can do to make sure those who are in their busiest time at the moment in the villages can actually fully partake in this, because so much will affect them, particularly when it comes to water scarcity and the like. And finally, you'll be pleased that I'm coming to a close, Leader. Finally, when it comes to transport, can we just remind that we required mass rapid transport in the last local plan. Now, naturally, we will have a difference of opinion as to what is the right solution. Some people in this room believe it's busways. I don't, and if the mayor or anyone else wants to agree with me, well, that's good news in my count. But we cannot start this road by saying, oh, you know, we're relying on others to provide this, to provide X. We have to accept that that's the reality. And actually, if somebody's got a political mandate for that, then we need to be listening, not throwing our toys out the pram, that we're not getting our own way. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. I'm going to make a couple of comments myself before I bring in Councillor Batchelor, because some of these comments were quite political. So when I said flexible, I could have said adaptive. Adaptive policies to suit the type of applications in the place where those applications are for. On food production, this local plan protects farmland more than any other local plan I've seen. Absolutely gives maximum protection to our green spaces. On consultation, it's an 8-week consultation. That is a long consultation and plenty of time for people to respond to it. And on mass rapid transport, we need solutions now, not in 30 years' time. Councillor Batchelor.
I mean, what more can I add to that? That's very comprehensive. I mean, just to rehash that, parking standards, I think we believe the policies we have are adaptable enough to cope with any changes that we might need to make in the future. In terms of the length of the consultation, we are actually proposing to consult for longer than we actually need to because of the time of year that we're proposing on doing it, given the time constraints that the process is restricting us to. We have a transport strategy from the Combined Authority that we need essentially to marry up with our local plan. And, thankfully, the point we're at now is we believe the two do correlate. So I think we're in a fairly solid position there. And yeah, as the leader said, we need solutions now to support the growth that we want to achieve. So yeah, that's the position we're in. Thank you.
Thank you. And which the government wants us to achieve, and which the previous government wanted us to achieve as well. Right, I'm going to come to Councillor Bradnam, and then I'm going to go see if there's anybody online who would like to speak, because we haven't come to people online yet. Councillor Bradnam, over to you.
Thank you very much, Leader. So I've been a councillor and on planning committee since 2014, and as such I've been here, as have others, since before 2018, when our previous South Cambs District Council and Cambridge City local plans were made. As I recall, that took 7 years to be achieved. And on the day when those plans were made, I recall Councillor Dr. Toomey Hawkins warning us that the inspector had recommended we immediately made a start on the new joint local plan. Toomey worked hard with the officers on the local plan from then until May this year, and I know it was hard for her to let the local plan go when she retired or stood down from this committee, this council. And anyone who knows Toomey knows she is synonymous with Nigerian fabrics and needlework. So although she can't be here today, this small pen holder, you might like to see, was a gift from her and is eminently functional, contains the cross of her faith, and is colourful, just like Toomey. So I'd like to think that even if she has not been with us in person or perhaps online, I'm not sure, then in this small way, Toomey's been with us this evening. So for myself as current chair of the South Cambs District Council Planning Committee, I'm not going to make any further comments about the local plan. I've been so impressed with the wealth of experience and knowledge that our officers have demonstrated in answering the numerous questions that have been fired at them from all directions. So I simply wanted to thank them for their hard work in bringing forward this plan to the stage that it's at now. And all being well, I look forward to this suite of documents going out to consultation, and I hope that as many of members of the public will engage with them and find them to their liking as possible. And I want to say thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bradnam, and thank you to you for your years of dedication and commitment to planning, because I think probably next to Toomey, you probably know more than anybody else, quite honestly, so thank you. Right, is there anyone online who would like to say anything? No? Okay, right, we shall move on. So we're now going to go to the vote, and we'll vote on the recommendations separately for each authority, with Cabinet members from Cambridge City Council taking the first vote, and then South Cambridge District Council members taking their vote. So therefore, yet again, the meeting will adjourn and reconvene under the chair of Councillor Thornborough.
Thank you very much. I just have a question for the officers about the proposal regarding the management and maintenance agreements for the shared use cycles. Is that an amendment that we have to note at this stage before we go to the voting?
Chair, in my view, those are delegation, as you can see in the recommendation, for minor and more significant amendments. I certainly think, given the consensus that we've heard tonight about support for that measure, that it doesn't go to the heart of the plan, it's therefore a minor change, and officers have heard that and will pick that up in the process prior to consultation, so I don't think you need to explicitly reference it.
Thank you very much. So the recommendations are set out on pages 3 and 4 of the Cambridge City Council agenda pack and on page 26 of the South Cambridgeshire District Council agenda pack. So I'm not proposing to read it all out because there are many points and many subpoints. So I'm assuming that you can access those pages and understand what you're voting for. So, Cambridge City Council Cabinet members, if there are no objections, we will take the recommendations en bloc. Please may I ask for a member to move the recommendations? Councillor Moore. Is there a seconder? Councillor Bird. Do Cambridge City Council members, Cabinet members, agree with the proposal? If members can signify they are happy to agree. Can I ask those in favour? And that's, there's none against. Any against?
Are you voting?
Oh, sorry. Sorry, apologies, it's me as well. Yes, I'm in favour. It's unanimous. Councillor Smart, do you have a question? Yes, thank you. And there's nobody's abstaining. So Cambridge City Council Cabinet therefore agree the proposals. I will now adjourn City Council's meeting to enable South Cambridgeshire District Council to convene under the chair of Councillor Bridget Smith.
Thank you very much. So, gosh, we're nearing the end. So please may I ask for a member of South Cambridgeshire District Council Cabinet to move the recommendation, which we'll also take on block. Thank you, Councillor Henry Batchelor, and I'm very happy to second the recommendations. So do South Cambridgeshire District Council Cabinet members agree with the proposals? Agree. Anyone wish to vote against? Anyone abstaining? So South Cambridgeshire District Council Cabinet therefore agrees the proposals. So we're now going to end the meeting of South Cambridgeshire District Council, noting that the next meeting of our Cabinet will be held on the 29th of September. And just before I hand back to Councillor Thornborough, I just want to say this is the second time we've done this, and actually it's quite something to bring two councils together like this, and in such a collaborative, positive, sort of affirming way. I don't think there's many other places in the country that would achieve this. So I think we all need to, perhaps give ourselves a clap, shall we? Thank you. So I now hand back to Councillor Thornborough to convene and conclude the meeting for Cambridge City Council.
Thank you very much. This brings the meeting to a close. Thank you all for your attendance in person and online, to those watching the live stream. And South Cambridgeshire District Council officers for hosting the meeting here in the chamber. Thank you all for your time, and I hope you have a safe journey home.
Thank you. Well done, everyone.
Confirm it.